let's talk about leverage. As I create on this channel and throw verbiage around, I realize pretty quickly in the comments or my messages that a lot of people get a little bit lost when I throw certain words around. One of them in the past has been leverage. As I begin to create this conversation around it in the middle of my video, I've been told it can go from, hey, these wide receivers are pretty cool, and it can turn into a maze and turn into an entirely different topic that they maybe weren't prepared to listen to. Listen, I'm not a football genius. I wouldn't even consider myself well-versed at this point. I'll leave that to much smarter football minds. I learn something new every single day from much smarter people than myself. But I have learned a few things along the way that create this light bulb over my head, and I do get carried away with it. So let's talk about leverage. I am your host, Jason, and this is Blueprints. First off, oftentimes in football, you'll realize there are fancy words for a player doing a good job. For example, leverage is really just creating a throwing lane for your quarterback by being between the DB and the quarterback. Most people would simply call that being open. But there is more to it than that. I could, of course, go through a prospect's profile and tell you guys that this wide receiver is just really good at getting open. But oftentimes that leads to people questioning the process to that result, to that conclusion that I came to. Well, what if we back this up to the line of scrimmage and explain from the beginning, how did this wide receiver get open? Well, now we're getting somewhere. You see, this is where leverage really starts. Where is the DB in relation to the wide receiver? Is he pressed inside shade? Is he pressed man-to-man, squared up to the wide receiver? Is he pressed an outside shade, off the line of scrimmage, inside shade, off the line of scrimmage, outside shade? Is he squared up but off 7 yards? You know, there's just a litany of different spots that this defender could be in that all dictates what the receiver's plan is going into this play. These are all spots a defensive back can sit in. It really depends on the alignment, the coverage, and the priority of the defensive back. If he has sideline help, if he has inside help, if it's cover one and there's a linebacker sitting in the middle, maybe that corner is going to go outside shade. Things like that. So let's draw a slant against press coverage. The simple question here is, where does the wide receiver want the defensive back to be when he reaches the point in his route that he expects the football? We'll call that the catch point. And we'll draw a zone there to make it clear that this is where the quarterback wants the football and the receiver to meet. This is where we begin to talk about a receiver's release package. What is there in his arsenal that can move the defensive back into a spot that makes this an easy throw and catch with minimal resistance, with space? How consistent is the pacing of his route tree? Does he sell everything else when he runs this slant? Does he make an out route look possible here? What about a fade? All important questions to think about when watching a wide receiver attain leverage in his release. So, squared up, man-to-man, how does this wide receiver create space and attain leverage against this defensive back? Well, without getting too deep into wide receiver technique, you need to manipulate the defensive back and sell every other route before your break. How can you do this in 2 steps? Release and pacing. With the DB squared up, you already have step 1 achieved. And we'll get to step 1 in a minute here. Step 2 is to sell your other routes. Whether it's attacking the outside shoulder before a jab step outside, a turn of the hips, feet to the boundary, or using your eyes to fool the DB's eyes, the goal is for the receiver to fool the DB into believing that anything is on the table. Once the DB is sold, the receiver can shift his attack to the inside, which in theory attains the necessary leverage, and hopefully this paints a good picture here, that the QB needs to make a confident throw. Now, hopefully this sells you a little bit on what leverage is. If you're going through that work to get inside of the DB or going through that work to create a throwing lane for your quarterback, I'm hoping that it's becoming a little bit clear here of what I mean by leverage. And if it's not, I'm not explaining it very well, and I apologize. Let's rewind a little bit and move the defensive back to the inside shade. Remember when I mentioned step one? Let's get back to that. With a defensive back inside, a quarterback will look that way pre-snap, and 9 out of 10 times, the quarterback will decide that the slant is off the table. Quarterbacks read leverage just as much, if not more so, than the best receivers do. It also comes with instinct. If something is in your way, your first thought is to avoid it. Insert your alpha wide receivers, the guys that demand attention, your true route runners. Step one, even the odds. Guys like Keenan Allen and Devontae Adams will take on inside shades with an inside route any day of the week. All those out routes, those hitches, seams, corners, digs are about to pay off on a slant. Let me explain why. I mentioned route pacing earlier and the ability to make all routes look the same. To sell every single route despite only one being your objective, evening the odds is important because that's a baseline of beginning the process to selling this DB on something else. How do you achieve step one? It's all part of the release package. Keenan Allen has a signature release move that he's used throughout his career, well, at least since his third season in the NFL. And you can tell on film that it's one of his favorites. It's a quick lateral step with his plant foot remaining outside of the DB to keep the other moves theoretically on the table. And now the game is on. Now that Allen is even, he can go right back to his usual arsenal. He can attack the outside shoulder, he can move his eyes to the sideline, and he can pull the DB with his feet. Allen likes to do all three. Now, remember the catch point? This is why chemistry between a quarterback and his receiver is so important. They need to be on the same page consistently so that the wide receiver can have the opportunity to extend the release of routes. Without that chemistry, a ball can be out too early or not at all. Once the receiver has sold the DB outside and turns his attention back inside to the catch point, leverage is attained, and the play is easier than it should have been. This is what separates guys running routes from true route runners. When the odds are stacked against the wide receiver, does he have the release arsenal to get open anyway, to force the DB into forgetting his assignment? This is your alpha wide receiver route runners and the importance of understanding assignments and leverage. It leaves everything on the table, and it gives the quarterback confidence that regardless of what his eyes see, the opportunity is there. So here we're gonna kind of look at this route from Keenan Allen, who is positioned right here. And we're gonna pay attention to how he sets this up. This is gonna be an out route, and if you can see here, this is actually outside shade. So you might be wondering here, well, won't the quarterback look at this and move off that read? I mentioned this earlier. But you're going to see here what I'm talking about by this alpha route runner, these true route runners, what separates the alpha wide receivers from just guys running routes, right? So we've already shown here it's outside shade, and Keenan Allen is gonna beat this on an out route. And you're gonna watch the first couple of steps here, and we're gonna take this really slow, and you're gonna see that he actually does what I was talking about earlier. See that lateral step here. Plant foot is still, I'm going to point it out here, this plant foot is still on the inside of the corner. And so what you're going to notice here is that it sets the cornerback and it makes them even. You're going to see both feet now are even. He has evened the odds, as I mentioned earlier. So now all Keenan Allen has to do is go back into his normal release package, what he would do if the corner was even from the get-go. He has evened the odds at this point. So now the rep is reset. And so you're going to see Keenan Allen now is going to give this subtle jab back inside. It's not so subtle because Keenan Allen has really good lateral movement. He's going to give that back to the inside because that plant foot kept everything on the table. It kept absolutely everything on the table. He still has an inside route at his disposal here, in theory, as far as the corner is aware. And now Keenan Allen sells it vertical, keeps square. Notice that, he keeps square. Gives a little arm action here to 7. Pushes him inside because now, at this point, look where 7's hips are. And this is key. The hips are this way. Keenan Allen's his catch point is over here. If the catch point is here and the hips are pointing that way, what you have here is you have leverage. This is what I'm talking about. At this point, Keenan Allen has won the route. He has leverage over 7. Justin Herbert has his eyes in the middle. That's just the quarterback and keeping his eyes in the middle, not giving away where he's going. Now Keenan Allen makes his move outside. Now the odds are not even. Now the odds are Keenan Allen has won the route and can make the catch. So outside shade, still an outside catch, and on top of that, he gets more. This is what I'm talking about here in terms of your alpha wide receivers setting up, despite the odds stacked against them, having moves in their arsenal, having the release package necessary to make something happen, to make something out of nothing is how it's normally said. I would say that he has something because he has the weapons at his disposal. He has the routes in his arsenal, the release package in his arsenal. And that is what has made Keenan Allen so good over the last decade. Now we're going to look at yet another example. Again, Keenan Allen. I'm sorry. I know that one hurts for a lot of people who watch this. Keenan Allen, if you'll take a look, you can just see by his feet. I really don't have to draw this out, but I'm going to. You can see by his feet where he's at versus the DB's feet and where they're at. You got inside shade here. So now the quarterback is going to know pre-snap, and you're going to see here that Keenan Allen just runs an out route. It's a deep out. You know you have this route, given that you have the time for it to develop. And you'll still see Keenan Allen here. You'll actually notice, watch his feet, where he aims when he's running this route. As I mentioned earlier, attacking the shoulder, the opposite shoulder of where you're going, to get that little bit of push inside from the DB. DB's hips are inside. Keenan Allen is already on his way out. So Keenan Allen, once again, has taken the leverage and ran with it. And then last one here, this is just a very simple stack. So as I mentioned earlier, when the corner is stacked right on top of the receiver, this is press man-to-man, squared up to the receiver. And Keenan Allen is going to attack the opposite shoulder of the corner. And it's so fast that you go frame by frame and he's already there. And you can see that jab step I was talking about earlier. Keeps the plant foot inside to keep everything on the table, and then makes his move from there. Still sells outside, look at the eyes, the shoulders, and then gets inside. And this is him attaining leverage in this play. So hopefully after all this, you guys have a good picture in terms of what I'm talking about when I say this draft prospect knows how to attain leverage, knows how to attack DBs to attain that leverage and give his QBs good throwing lanes. When you have a college prospect that you really like and that you're watching, and you don't really know what to look for in terms of how pro ready he is or what he gives you, what he brings your team, this is one of the first things to look for when you're looking for those separators, for those route runners. Jacob Cowing is a good example. I said in my last video that I really loved Jacob. My dog is going insane right now. I really loved what Jacob Cowing brought to the table. And this is really distracting right here. I'll be right back. All right, I don't know what that was. Sprinting in circles, craziest she's ever been. She picked the perfect time to do it. But Jacob Cowing, from the last video, I was saying that he knows how to attain leverage. He knows how to attack the DB to get that leverage for you. I think I also said the same thing about Ryan Flournoy. I should have anyway. But that's the kind of thing, when you're looking for these separators in college, you're looking for these route runners, you really want to see how they go about it. How much do they know? How much do they bring to the table? Can they soak in information? Are they a little bit ahead of their peers in terms of understanding how to attack defenses? How do I identify leverage? Identifying leverage is huge, especially once you get to the next level. It's one of the main things for quarterbacks and for receivers both to get onto that same page. And Justin Herbert and Keenan Allen, as I was showing just a moment ago, are really great at it. If you guys want to see more like this, just let me know. I'd be more than happy to post stuff like this, even though it's not directly perhaps related to the Chargers. I tried to do it as best I could with the Keenan Allen, but I understand it's not directly related to the Chargers and this exciting offseason we're about to kick off here with the draft. More coming on that, by the way. Taking a little longer than I expected. I want to get some mocks out there in the near future. But again, hope you guys like this video. If you did, leave a comment under and say what you would like improved, what you thought was a little much, what you would like going forward in terms of maybe something that you would like cleared up as well, or more studios like this. Just let me know. This has been Blueprints. I'm your host, Jason, and thank you guys so much for tuning in to another episode. Have a good one.